Okay, this is an automatic pilot kit 15. Now basically APK-15 tells you that it is a variable height with a servo remote control system. If you look closely, it has the same pilot assembly with an igniter, so you don't have to light it with a match. Okay, now these things aren't particularly reliable, but they're there. But if you look, it looks almost exactly like the one on the SPK that we've left installed. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to hold this thing out just for a second. I'll go over the APK. If you can see, the APK is considerably larger. It has to be able to dissipate some heat. Most of the time you're going to see it installed like this or like this. Okay? That's just for extra space. Okay, just like my safety pilot kit, there are 3 positions: off, pilot, and on. Just like the other one. The difference here is that when I turn from off to pilot, there is a spark that's generated, and it'll light the pilot. Okay? Once you're in the pilot for a little while and you hold it in just like you did with the safety pilot, you can turn it to the full on position. All right? Now from there, we'll hook up a remote control, and the remote control will hook to these 2 wires right here. If you look closely, they're actually 2 different sizes. The reason they're 2 different sizes is that you can't work it backwards. So if you take them apart one way, you hook them back the same way, no problem. Because of course the female versions of these connectors are going to be the same size. You see, one's going to be smaller, one's going to be larger, so they'll be the same size as the male piece. Okay? And then when you press the remote control, you'll actually see this valve turning like this. It'll actually throttle itself and stop wherever you want. Now the number one problem with this particular type of valve is an operator error. Okay? What people do is they get the pilot lit and they leave it in pilot and they start the remote control. Nothing's going to come on in the pilot position. So when someone has an APK and they say, hey, I've got my pilot lit, but I can't get my gas logs to turn on, ask them if it's in the on position or the pilot position. Because once I turn it to the on position, everything will work. Now, as a side note, before you have them turn it to on, ask them to turn the variable down. Because if it's on full blast, when they switch from pilot to on, that system's going to come on full blast. And if you get somebody who's not ready for that, it can be a little bit scary. Okay? So ask them if it's in the pilot position. You say, okay, great. Well, now we know what the problem is. Now what I want you to do is take the rotary and make sure it's all the way down, and then turn it to on. Then when they grab the remote control, they'll be able to control it up and down accordingly. With the APK-15 is a remote control that looks a lot like a 1001 from Skytech. It actually is, but it's called a 1001 SR. And what the SR tells you is that instead of just being on and off, it's press and hold. When I press this, the control valve will turn itself on and up until I release the button. If I press off and hold, it will drop down until I release the button. So when you go to replace a remote control, or if you have to replace the remote control piece, the handheld piece and the receiver piece, is a 1001 SR on an APK-15, not a standard 1001. One of the telltale signs to know that you have an APK-15 is this little chunk of wood. Now it's not really wood, it's a piece of ceramic, but it's made and painted to look like a piece of Peterson gas logs wood. Okay? And what they do is they set this in front of the control valve to hide it. So from the front of the fireplace, what you see is a piece of wood, and you don't see the control valve. Okay? The remote control is actually radio frequency, so you don't have to point it right at it. You can actually hold it, and it will vary the flame height without having to actually see the system. Okay? And the remote control is also going to have a small little box that sits off to the side. This is a great little way to hide the control valve and make it blend in.
For other fireplace tips, visit southernhearth.com.